Let me just start with the broad lens, and that is, what do you think of Florida through 2 games this year?
I know less about them than I did before. That's the weird.
Same in Knoxville.
I know. Well, that's a weird thing. I mean, they played this first game, obviously on the road, hostile environment. Things did not go. I mean, Billy Napier was stunned by how poorly they played and all the mistakes they made. They came back. They played an awful team, handled them the right way. Ran the ball, got to play a bunch of kids in there. Would have had a shutout, but the 4th-team tailback fumbled at the 8. So, but does that mean anything? No. So I have no idea. This is going to be the litmus test for this team.
So, Pat, when I watched them play against Utah, I think the thing that stood out to me the most was, if there was ever a year Florida didn't need a pure drop back passer at quarterback, it might have been this year. And I want you to elaborate on that. It seems like they just have some issues in pass protection. Am I right about that, or was that just Utah?
Well, they did in the first game, and Utah did a great job. But don't forget, Utah's got a really good defense. I mean, this is an SEC type defense, so I'll give them credit for that too. But they didn't block well. Again, they had basically 5 new starters because their starting center was not healthy enough to play. So they had 5 new starters, and guys had struggled to get to know each other. I'm not sure how good the tailbacks blocked in that game either. So they definitely struggled with it. So, but the next game, of course, you're playing McNeese or McNeese State, depends on who you want to believe is the real name of the school. But you have that game, and they did a great job. They blocked well on the run. So again, I don't know about this offensive line. But they've got what they've got at quarterback, and there's nowhere else to turn. So it could have been different, but it's not, and it is what it is.
Were you surprised by the line that started at 8.5 and is now seemingly settled at 7? But I wouldn't be surprised if it went down.
Well, I think it was in double digits this summer at one point, like 10.5 or something, because I checked it. And I think Florida was a 65-point underdog in their 5 biggest games. So that's not good, But I'm not surprised. The only thing is the bookies tend to give the Swamp 5 points. Like most schools, you get 3. There's places where it's 4. There's other places where it's 5. But the Swamp always tends to be a 5 point. So that means kind of they think Tennessee's 12 points better. And they may be. They may well be. I would not be surprised if they went out there and handle Florida again because of the talent that they have. They've got older talent. That's the biggest problem. Florida doesn't have a senior on their entire 3-deep defense. So, that's we can blame a lot of things for that, but we're not here to blame people.
No, we're here to support people and bring people up, Pat.
That's right. We're here to unite America.
That's right.
That's what we want out of our media. Pat, interestingly enough, I've always wondered the Florida perspective, because I know that Tennessee, theoretically, this should be one of those years where Tennessee is the better team. They're favored going down there. But at the same time, it is Tennessee, Florida. And if you don't know, Tennessee fans have an expectation of beating Kentucky, regardless of if Kentucky's top 10 and they're unranked and having a losing season. They still find a way to beat Kentucky. Do Florida fans feel this? Does Florida Nation feel the same way about Tennessee? Like, yeah, okay, they're top 10 and we're struggling right now, Florida, but it's still Tennessee and we just beat Tennessee. That's what we do.
I think, believe it or not, this has been an incredibly smart Florida fan base this year. And I don't always say that about them. But they understand where Florida is. It's going to take a while. And they also understand that the last nine games that were played in the Swamp have nothing to do with this one. The only thing it has to do with it is that Princely Umanmielen, whatever, I never can pronounce his last name, sacked Hendon Hooker and knocked him out of the game. So we got to see Joe Milton for 8 passes in the fourth quarter. That's the only thing they have in common. But, basically it's a new team for both teams, new quarterbacks and everything. So that has nothing to do with it. So I think the fan base is like basically saying, look, this is great. We got them at home. We're going to rock this place. It's going to be loud. We're going to make them understand what the swamp means. But we also know we might lose the game. And if we do, it's not the end of the world. We're trying to stay off the ledge. Now, the opposite of that would be if Florida goes out and does the kind of things they did against Utah and they lose the game. And that's where the heat all of a sudden gets turned up. Right now, there's no heat on Billy Napier. I believe that there's two kinds of heat. Perceived heat and real heat. Perceived heat is what the fans think there's heat on somebody, or the media thinks the real heat is when the AD or the president or and the big boosters are putting the heat on. So there's no heat on Billy Napier right now. But if he goes out and they commit a bunch of false start penalties, which shouldn't happen at home, and do some silly things, and if they somehow end up with 2 number 3s on the field again, people are going to go, what's going on here? There's already a group of fans who really want Billy to get an offensive coordinator. And I'm like, they had a good offense last year. Their problem wasn't that they didn't have good plays called in the last game. There are things that I don't like that he does, but we'll see how he does in this game and how he does this season. Maybe at the end of this season, he needs to look at it, but I don't think so right now.
Tracy kind of read my mind on our message board, said Florida handling NIL about as bad as it can be until that's fixed, no turnaround. They have had a couple of very public issues in the NIL realm. I think Tennessee's actually one of the best in college football in the NIL realm. How would you evaluate Florida to this point?
Well, it was a mess. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of stories here, but there were a lot. The people that were running the NIL were basically trying to do it $10 at a time, which is not how you do it, as we all know. And so you ended up with guys not being able to get money, and then they were promising money. Jaden Rashada obviously was promised by somebody outside to get all this money. That's a whole mess, and that's done. They've taken control of it. The law changed in the state of Florida so they could take control of it, and Florida could be involved in it a lot more. And so they're doing a much better job. Guys are making money. There's no doubt about it here at Florida. I think every player gets something. So is it helping? Yeah, it's helping. They've got guys who are doing pretty well financially as far as that goes. They're not, I don't think, at that level of Tennessee or certainly Alabama or Georgia, who was doing NIL 4 or 5 years ago. They've been great at NIL. Of Texas A&M. There's still Florida's still lagging a little bit, but they've definitely gotten better at it, and it's organized and they know what they're doing now.
Pat, just for comedy purposes, looking back at the Florida-Tennessee series, how much do you miss trying to figure out who was going to outwit who when Butch Jones and Jim McElwain were going at it?
There's nothing I missed about either one of those guys. I can tell you that much right there. But think about that. Think about Butch Jones and those 2 games. It's unbelievable how Florida won those 2 games. And, McElwain, the best play in the McElwain era might have been a heave that was not scheduled and wasn't supposed to do it, and they ran a play for across the middle and ended up throwing the ball down the middle. So it's just somehow he found a way to win those games. The 2 that he coached here in the Swamp. Of course, he lost the one up there, but it was never a battle of wits.
That's a very good point. You had a player on our message board. I know Jadarius Perkins entered the transfer portal during the season, and maybe some others as referenced on our message board that I haven't heard about. Is that a red flag, or is that just roster change under Billy Napier?
One of the guys who got in the portal, I didn't even know was on the team. So that tells you something right there. But Perkins wasn't going to play. They didn't run off guys, but they basically let them know, here's what you're going to have to do if you want to play. And a lot of guys said, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to get up at 6 a.m. A couple of linemen left that just didn't feel like doing that. They didn't feel like putting that work in. And I'm not saying that that's the right way to do it, but certainly this is Billy Napier's plan. And so they left, but to leave during the season means you didn't get to play in the first game, so you're gone. That's the world we live in today, where guys are, if you don't play, you're taking your ball and you're going somewhere else, and maybe you do, and maybe you don't. Maybe you get in somewhere, or maybe you end up playing, in front of 5,000 people. So, but it's not a. Look, they're putting the hammer down on these guys, and they had a rough week of practice last week, even though it was just McNeese because they had played so poorly. But they're going to get the guys in there that they want that'll do the things the way they want to do them. And whether that works or not, I don't know. I know that it works. It worked in Alabama. It works in Georgia. But the bottom line is that there's no guarantee it's going to work here. You just got to wait and see how it goes. But obviously, they're 15 games into this experiment.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but based on what you said about putting the hammer down last week in practice and this week, it sounds like they kind of have, this may be too strong, Pat, but the back against the wall mentality sort of thing early in the season.
Wasn't so much that. It was that they had practiced really hard and really worked hard on everything, and then they just looked like a team that had not practiced in the Utah game. And I think they just felt like we need to get this stuff figured out right away. We can't wait. So let's get it figured out. And then you can take Tennessee week and not maybe go as hard physically so that you save some of yourself, but mentally you're prepared and you're ready to go. So that's my theory. Again, we're not allowed to watch practice, so we can only go with what people tell us and and that is what I was told by somebody who did watch practice, that they went really hard. It's more of, hey, let's get this right. We're not getting it right. Let's get it right.
Pat, great stuff. You're so tan. You make me want to go sit outside a little bit. You're making me look
a lot of golf.
Pretty white. How do we follow your work? You do fantastic stuff for WRUF, I know.
Yeah, I'm on WRUF.com. We do the radio show 5 days a week. At Pat_Dooley is my Twitter, and I do a podcast twice a week. Mondays with Steve Spurrier is always fun. We talked a lot about Tennessee. If you want to find that, another duly noted podcast, pretty easy to find, and you can listen to the former HBC who terrorized Tennessee fans by calling it you can't spell citrus without UT. And then 2 years later, he played in the Citrus Bowl.
The best was actually in '96. He did a thing at a meeting where he was like, let's look at Tennessee's goals this year. No SEC East, no SEC. And then it was like not even a state champion because they lost to Memphis that year.
It was actually a piece of it was a paper, a mimeograph paper that somebody had sent him. And he handed it to me at the media days, and he goes, "Here, don't tell anybody I gave this to you." But yeah, it was national championship crossed out, SEC championship crossed out, SEC East championship crossed out, state of Tennessee championship crossed out because they lost to Memphis that year. So
yeah,
he had fun with it.
And then I think he said like Knox County regional champion.
Yeah, Knox County regionals.
I don't remember that at all, but that's golden stuff. Pat, I appreciate it. Have a great rest of the day and enjoy the game and the rest of the season.
All right, guys. Great being on with you.
I appreciate it. Pat Dooley, WRUF, long time with the Gainesville Sun, knows as much about Florida as anybody. Can you imagine spending a little bit of time with Steve Spurrier every Monday and his quick wit?
I mean, again, there is a coach that I've never, ever loved a coach and never will. Like, I love Steve Spurrier because he's just so honest and he doesn't hide. I mean, you know this. He's going to tell you the truth. He's the least likely coach. He would not be Josh Heupel. He would be he would tell us how long Cooper Mays is out for. He would tell us that Joe Milton played awful over the weekend.
Green Wave says, sounds terrible to spend time with Spurrier. No. He is so competitive. I remember, and I don't know if it was a hip issue or what, but he showed up to SEC Media Days about 4 or 5 years ago, and he was part of some show. I can't remember what it was, but he essentially reminded everybody that what was the AAFL or whatever it was. Remember
it was the yes, Alliance of American Football League.
Yeah, whatever it was. He reminded everybody that even though the season had gotten cut short, that his Apollos had won more games and deserved the championship. That's what he worked it into the conversation. It was like, what do you think of the SEC this year? And I was like, just want to remind everybody that our Apollos, we won more games than anybody else. So technically, we should get the trophy. Just remind you.
When God forbid, when Lee Corso is no longer able to do College Game Day anymore, come on, Steve Spurrier on College Game Day every week. Just how great would he be?
He would absolutely not want to do that, but he would be great.